Alrighty, in this video we're going to talk about how we can dispose of observables and also how we can manipulate observables with sort of pseudo operators, kind of give you guys an idea of how operators work behind the scenes. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and just comment. That's really getting annoying. Okay. So how do we dispose of a subscription? Well, before we do that, I want to add a little console log in here. I'm going to say console log generating index. So every time our interval fires, we'll get a console log message out. All right? Then what I'm going to do is for every second dot subscribe, I'm going to say const subscription equals, and then I'm going to say window set timeout. How about 3 seconds? Subscription.unsubscribe. So we see here that when we call the subscribe method, we get an object back. And that object represents our subscription. And we simply call unsubscribe to unsubscribe from that subscription. Now we can hit Control S. And of course we get an error because I did window.setTimeout instead of set timeout. Remember, we're node. All right, generating 0, 1 next. Generating 1, 1 next 1. But we're still generating. We unsubscribed from the interval, but we're still generating. We have a memory leak, honestly. We're no longer interested. We're no longer getting the subscriptions, but we're still generating. So how do we fix that? Well, we fix that very easily. I'm going to say let interval equals set interval. So we have a reference to the interval so we can clear it when we're done. And all I have to do is return a function from our generator function that we passed into new Rx observable. And this function will be invoked when it's unsubscribed from. So we simply say clear interval, and we pass in interval. Now I can hit Control S, it'll restart, generating 0, generating 1, and then after 3 seconds, we didn't get the third one. Maybe if I say 3,500 seconds, generating 0, generating 1, generating 2, and then exit. And it's done. So this function got invoked when we unsubscribed. So let's take a look at operators. Now this is going to be really cool. Go ahead and clear that out. And what I'm going to do is, let's say we wanted to manipulate this observable. So how do operators come into play? How do they work behind the scenes? And obviously there's a take operator. This is kind of getting a little further in this particular example than I wanted to go, because we'll be talking about the take operator later. But I can simply say take 3, and I can run this, and it'll take the first 3 items, and then it'll complete. Let's go ahead and nuke this set timeout as well. We don't want to unsubscribe yet. So let's just prove that the take 3 operator takes the first 3 items, then completes. Let's write our own take operator. So nuke that. We're going to write our own take operator. Oh no, I don't want to do that. Because that really bugs me when that just keeps on going. Let's write a take operator. So what is an operator in Reactive Extensions? Well, it's simply an observable that wraps another observable. So this is where things get really cool. I'm going to say function take, and we'll have taken 2 parameters, observable and amount. And this will return a new observable, Rx observable. Observer goes into. So what is this observable going to do? Well, what we want to do is we want to subscribe on the observable that was passed into take. And we only want to take amount items, and then we want to complete. How would we use this? So before we implement this, how would we use this take operator? Well, we would simply say first 5 seconds equals take every second 5. And then instead of subscribing on every second, we would subscribe on first 5 seconds. So notice how we are creating our initial observable. We're applying an operator to it that returns a new observable. And then we're subscribing to that transformed observable. So how do we do this? Well, when this observable is subscribed to, we want to subscribe to the base observable. So I'm going to say, well, first let's say let count equals 0. Then I'm going to say const subscription equals observable subscribe. And for the subscribe, I'm going to pass in my next method, my next item method, which honestly, this should only be one line, our error method, and our complete method. Again, I'm using the second way to do a subscription here, not passing in 3 functions, but passing in an object that has these 3 functions. We'll fill these in a moment here. And then I'm simply going to, at the end, I'm going to say return subscription unsubscribe. So we've wrapped our first observable in a second observable. And when that observable gets subscribed to, it subscribes to the base observable. So what would the implementation of next look like? Well, next would simply, actually this will be multiple lines. Next is simply going to say observer.next item. And then it's going to say if ++ count is greater or equal to amount, observer.complete. So this is going to be something that'll twist your mind a little bit. And there's a lot going on right here, but I really wanted to show you guys kind of how an operator would be implemented behind the scenes. You'll rarely have to do this, and there's actually a better way to implement operators than this that's built into Reactive Extensions, and we can take a look at that later. But for now, this is kind of at the core of what we're doing. We're chaining subscriptions. So remember, we're returning a new observable that'll take an observer. The observer is going to be the subscriber that is passed in to the subscribe method on this observable. And then we create another subscription on the base observable. Whoops, this should be observable. Actually, you know what? This should actually be source observable money. And take should also be money. But the point is we take our source observable, we subscribe to it. On the next item, we pass it along into ours. We're passing it through. But when we get so many items, we just complete. What do we do on error? On error, we pass the error along. We simply say observer error error. If the source observable makes an error, we pass that error right on through to the final output. For complete, we do the same thing. Observer.complete. And that's it. Let's go ahead and hit Control-S and run our nodemon. And we get generating 0, generating 1, generating 2, generating 3, generating 4. So we get 5 items, and then we get a complete. And that's really the basics of creating your operators. So there's a handful of things that I'm really trying to explain here in this video and the last video. An observable is nothing more than a generator function, like this, that is invoked every time it gets subscribed to. A subscription is nothing more than a next method, a complete method, and an error method that gets passed into subscribe. And you can dispose of subscriptions when you're done with them. Observables can clean up. If they get unsubscribed to, they can execute code and clean up. They can free resources. They can unhook themselves from event handlers. And operators are nothing more than wrappers around observables. You return a new observable. You take the source observable. You subscribe to it. You perform your transformation. You pass along errors and completes. And when you're done, you unsubscribe. And that's really the core of it. So right here, we could implement a filter. We could implement a map. We could implement a skip. We could implement practically any operator available in Reactive Extensions. So, to summarize what a Reactive Extensions really is it's an implementation of an observable. It's an implementation of subscriptions. And it's a big collection of methods that look just like this, or very similar, rather. And I know this is going to bend your mind a little bit, especially if you're not used to this sort of passing functions around everywhere. It's going to bend your mind. But it should start to get you into the kind of concept of what RxJS is, what reactive programming is. Now, obviously, one big difference between our take operator and the take operator built into Reactive Extensions is that we can't chain it. We didn't add this operator to the prototype of observable, so we have to invoke it outside of that. So, we can't method chain it like what you saw in our autocomplete example. But at the core of it, that's all it does. An operator listens to a source, and it emits to a destination, and it performs a transformation. In the next video, I'm going to show you guys some built-in observables. some ways that we can create observables that are very convenient and allow us to create very simple primitive observables with very little code. And we'll see you guys then.